George Stinney Jr. was born on October 21, 1929, in Pinewood, South Carolina. He was raised in the segregated town of Alkaloo. Alkaloo was a tiny, working-class mill town divided by railroad tracks between white and black areas. It looked like most other small southern towns at the time. There was little interaction between white and black citizens due to segregated schools and churches. However, though they lived separately, men from both white and black families worked together for the D.W. Alderman and Sons Company. George's father worked for the mill, and his family lived in a 3-room company house reserved for black workers. George attended Alkaloo School for Black Children, where his mother worked as a cook. He was in the 7th grade. On March 23, 1944, 11-year-old Betty June Binnicker and 7-year-old Mary Emma Thames rode their bicycles in search of flowers. On their way, they stopped near George Stinney Jr.'s house, where Stinney was sitting with his sister Amy. The two girls asked them where to get maypops, the yellow edible fruit of passion flowers. After telling them where to go, George and Amy continued their day, and the two girls rode off. Betty and Mary never returned to their home. Following their disappearance, hundreds of Alkaloo residents, including George Stinney's father, came together to search for the missing girls. However, the girls wouldn't be found on that day. The next morning, George Burke Sr., one of the big bosses at the lumber mill, led a search and discovered the mutilated dead bodies of the young girls in a soggy ditch. Both girls had suffered blunt force trauma to the face and head. According to a report by the medical examiner, the wounds had been, quote, inflicted by a blunt instrument with a round head about the size of a hammer, end quote. Both girls' skulls had been punctured. The report also noted no evidence of sexual assault to Mary, though Betty's genitalia was slightly bruised. Both girls' hymens were still intact. Law enforcement agents arrested George and his elder brother Johnny after getting information from an informant that the girls were seen chatting with George. They later freed Johnny but kept George detained. It was also rumored that the girls stopped at the home of a white family, but this was never confirmed, and police never searched for a white killer. Following George's arrest, his father was fired from his job at the sawmill, and the Stinney family was forced to leave their company housing. The family was concerned about their safety. Stinney's parents never saw him again before the trial. George Stinney was interrogated in a small room without his attorney, his parents, or any witnesses. After the interrogation, the police reported on Stinney's confession that he had killed Binnicker and Thames in an attempt to have sex with one of the girls. H.S. Newman, the arresting officer, made a handwritten statement which read, quote, "I arrested a boy named George Stinney. He then made a confession and told me where to find a piece of iron about 15 inches long. He said he put it in a ditch about 6 feet from the bicycle." End quote. Because there were rumors of lynching, the police didn't reveal Stinney's location before the trial. Even his parents had no information about his whereabouts. The trial of George Stinney Jr. began at a Clarendon County courthouse nearly a month after the death of Binnicker and Thames. The court appointed Charles Plowden as George's attorney, but he did little to nothing to defend George. The trial lasted barely 2 hours, during which nothing could be produced to protect George. The most significant evidence produced against him was his alleged confession. However, a written record of his confession would never be produced. After barely a 10-minute deliberation, the all-white jury found George Stinney Jr. guilty. In 1944, most African Americans in the South were prohibited from voting and therefore ineligible to serve on juries. Stinney was sentenced to death on April 24, 1944. As the date of George Stinney's execution got closer, various campaigns and protests started across South Carolina to save his life. Protesters petitioned Governor Olin Johnson, demanding amnesty for George because of his young age. Protesters from all over the state and country sent hundreds of letters to the governor's office. All they wanted was mercy for George. When protesters warned Governor Johnston of racial tensions, he responded with a letter describing George's alleged offense. The note read, quote, "I have just talked with the officer who made the arrest in the case. It may be interesting for you to know that Stinney killed the smaller girl to rape the larger one. He then killed the larger girl and raped her dead body. 20 minutes later, he returned and attempted to rape her again, but her body was too cold. All of this he admitted himself." End quote. On June 16, 1944, George Stinney Jr. walked into the executioner chamber at the South Carolina State Penitentiary in Columbia, dressed in a loose-fitting striped jumpsuit and a Bible tucked under his arm. Reportedly, at the time of his execution, the 14-year-old was 5 feet 1 inch tall and weighed 95 pounds. The electrician struggled to adjust an electrode to his right leg because of his small stature, and the mask was too big to cover his face. In 2014, 70 years after George Stinney Jr.'s execution, his murder conviction was overturned. Judge Carmen T. Mullen said the death sentence was a great and fundamental injustice. After the exoneration, George's sister Catherine Robinson said, quote, "It was like a cloud just moved away. When we got the news, we were sitting with friends. I threw my hands up and said, 'Thank you, Jesus.' Someone had to be listening. It's what we wanted for all these years." End quote. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below.